All right, we're starting our final session for today, a not to be missed masterclass session with Alvanon's blocks and gradings team. Thank you for sticking with us. You really are in for a treat. Based on the last couple of years, I just want to let you know that we will have time for Q&A, and we never have enough time to get through the questions and answers. So if you do have a burning question you want to ask the team here, please put it in the comment section so we can flag it up. A little bit more about this session. So for many industry brands, working digitally has become a key element to support customers' expectations effectively and efficiently. In the product development process, utilizing a size set of avatars that accurately reflect the brand's fit standard in 3D can be a powerful tool, contributing to speed and approvals and sustainability with reduced physical samples. In this masterclass session, Inclusive Fit for Continuous Sizing, a technical perspective, with Kimberly Wick, Elizabeth Maginot, and Christina Onusko, Director of Blocks and Grading Services. They will discuss best practices and technical solutions to achieve great fit across a continuous size range for adults and children. All right, Liz, Chris, Kim, welcome to 3D Tech Fest. Take it away. Hi. All right. I think we can see your presentation. We have it here. And are you guys all right for audio?
Yeah. Chris, can you hear us?
What about Kimberly?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I love the headset.
Okay.
I think it's just Chris. Chris, can you hear us okay?
Let me just...
1 second. All right, hang in there with us, people, and we will get this up and running. So Liz, Kim, what do you think of Tech Fest so far?
Yeah, it's been great. Oh my gosh, so many awesome speakers, and it's been so informative. I'm really happy that the day's been going so well.
Yes. No, it's been really, really good. Putting it together has been incredible, but seeing it sort of come to life, it's almost like this, like, you know.
Yeah, and there's so many different topics to talk about, you know, all the different wormholes you could go down. And for tech people like us, it's so exciting. Anybody in the fashion industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, everybody. I have my headset working now.
There we go.
Chris.
Hi, Chris. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it was over on my other headset and not on these, and I had to find out which one, where it was in there. Got it now. This is just so weird. Okay.
It's
like waiting backstage at a performance, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Well, you're on the big stage now, so take it away.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for the little pause there. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, well, welcome, everyone. We are here to talk to you about inclusive fit for continuous sizing from a technical perspective. We have lots to share with you today. You know, what wonderful presentations we've seen today on inclusivity. I mean, it really is a huge umbrella, and it is so exciting and inspiring to hear about the amazing work that is happening. And I think we would all be in agreement to really say that there's a lot of work to be done to truly be inclusive. This is a technical session, and today we're focused on the technical aspects to consider in solutions for inclusivity in fit. My name is Chris Onusko, and I'm the Director for Blocks and Grading Services at Alvanon, and I have my team on with me. Kim and Liz, can you introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly Wick, and I'm a technical consultant on Chris's team, and I work with pattern development and grading.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Maginot. I'm also a technical consultant developing blocks and grading, and we're working in Browseware and Clo.
Okay, so we have lots to share with you today. We've heard a lot. Fashion is for everybody and anybody, and we truly believe that as well. Ensuring a better fit for all sizes across an extended and inclusive size range is absolutely at the forefront of the industry today. Many brands are offering extended size ranges, and certainly is requiring us to get better and think outside the box, finding some technical solutions that really do provide an inclusive fit for the customers. I think Jason said it really well yesterday when he said achieving inclusive fit really requires us to match the clothing to the consumer. And that is so true and so important. It really means understanding the customer in size and shape, and then responding to that need from a technical fit perspective. And so in this session, and it is a technical session, we love to be there, we are going to be discussing some technical solutions, what a technical solution might look like to achieve fit and continuous sizing. And we'll be looking at some women's and some children's in some great study that we did, and some findings that we have that we wanted to share. We certainly recognize that there is a lot of passion involved when it comes to pattern cutting and grading, and that means different approaches and different methods. And we respect and understand all of that. My team and I love to be in the weeds with you, exploring the technical solutions to achieve the best result. And we love also sharing our findings. So we hope we have some tips to take away for you today as well. So we're going to start with the women's grade study first, and we're using the Albanon Standard North America series for this one. And we know that brands today are really extending sizes well beyond size 22. We're using this as a continuous size range just for the time being, just to really look at that first big change that we're going to see in grading across 13 sizes from 00 to 22. And we're using the core size 6 as the base to start from. So we're going to do some talking about what it takes to achieve an inclusive fit when you're looking at the grading from the core size 6 and going up to those sizes to the size 22, and what the technical options might look like. So we're really going to, for women, we're going to look at 3 scenarios, including 2 approaches to the garment grading versus the use of multiple core sizes. We'll do some talking about which is best to consider, and keeping in perspective, considering production and what that means for vendors and suppliers to execute something like a more complicated grade. So before we jump in, this is our starting point. We're starting from the North American Women's Core Size 6 in the continuous sizing. And we have the block pattern image that you're seeing here, and the 3D visual, and then the physical sample. And from here, we're going to start with the first exercise in grading. So Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. This is the version 1 grade, and I'm calling it version 1 because, like Chris said, we're going to show you a version 2, an alternative method that we used, and then we'll compare them side by side shortly. So this is, it's not a traditional industry grade. It's nonlinear. And I'm just going to walk through a few things about this grade for some of you techies out there. The front length grade distribution is following the body, and the back pattern piece is grading the same as the front pattern piece in all those key body landmark areas, like the high point of the shoulder, the low point of the shoulder, the bust, the waist, and the hip. The across shoulder is grading a little bit more than body on both the front and the back, and that's so that we can maintain a nice shape in the armhole and a nice intersection. The shoulder seam of the graded sizes, they all remain parallel to the core size. The sleeve cap height is grading according to the low point of the shoulder. So I don't have my coordinates on the screen here, but X being a horizontal measurement, the X grade of the sleeve cap would grade the same as the X grade of the low point of the shoulder. And Chris is using her arrows there to kind of point that out. We do this so that we can keep the sleeve cap proportional to that armhole. The other thing that I wanted to point out on this is that the center back neck to the wrist is grading according to the body. And typically we don't put a grade at the wrist, but for 3D purposes, I did put a grade on the wrist on this one. The other thing last thing that I'll point out is that there is no back neck drop grade on this. So the back neck drop is grading the same for all the sizes across the size range. And we are viewing sizes 00 through 22 here. That was a lot, right? so let's take a look at it in 3D. And I'm just going to show you every other size from 00 up to 22, with the core size 6 being the third one from the left. And so you can start to see, and we're going to look at the opaque view first, and then then we'll look at the transparent. And you're going to start to see as we get to the larger sizes, 14, 16, or 14, 18, 22, you're starting to see a little bit of drag lines on the front and some, poor fit issues that's occurring. And we'll take a look at the side view. And again, on the larger sizes, you'll start to see, that across front, that front armhole, and at the bust, there's a lot more drag lines on those larger sizes. The front is aligning to the body. The back has a lot of extra length on those larger sizes. And also on the larger size, it's kind of hard to see at this distance, but there's a little bit of fabric gathering below the back neck, which probably indicates there could be some back neck drop grade that, might improve that. But that's why we're looking at it in 3D, right? This is the back view. And here again, as you get to the larger sizes, you're seeing a lot of extra length on that back and some of the bunching below the neck. Okay. So after grading that version, I wanted to take a closer look at the neck shape and the armhole shape. So I removed some of those components, the sleeve and the collar, and then I simulated it just so I could look at the front and the back and the armhole. And I changed the avatar to an A pose so that her arms are extended just slightly out from the body, and give it kind of a twirl here and zoom in so you can see. I wanted to see what's happening to that armhole. And as you can see on the larger sizes, there's a lot more gaping going on and the drag lines below the bust. Here, when we're looking at the back neck, you can see that it's riding up a little bit higher on the neck. Okay, so, and we're only looking at 4 of the sizes just so that it's easier for you to see. But typically we look at every size when we're checking the grade. But this is helping us troubleshoot it a little bit.
That's so valuable, isn't it, Kim, to be able to take some of the components off to be able to look at some other fit issues than just looking at it dressed fully.
Yeah, and to be able to look at it, in transparent and opaque. The transparent view is so nice to be able to see the body landmarks on the avatar and to make sure that they're lining up with the reference lines on the blocks, because we put reference lines on all of our blocks that map to that.
Yeah. That's great.
She's just showing the video a second time here.
Yeah, just as we were talking. Okay, thank you. All right, so, that's giving us an idea of what the grade looks like if we're following. It's still not a traditional industry grade. It is responding to what the body is doing. But now, the view on your screen you see now is the North American series extending from that 00 up to the 36. And one of the things that I just want to point out here is that, we had the core size 6 that we started in the range that we're really working with. But what I wanted to point out in talking now, we're going to take a look now specifically at the graded 22, and it is actually the same body here as the 20W. And this is really important, and it would be the best option to use a second core size at the 22, because this really is the bridge into going into plus sizes and the bigger sizes. So, and when we look at a size range, an extended grouping, with, in some of our brands, we're working with brands, and we're seeing where brands are now offering sizes that are going beyond the 36. When you start to consider size ranges that big as well, then it's time to think about an additional core size. And we recognize that this is not always, multiple core sizes is a challenging thing to do for some brands that might not have the resources to do it, but it really is an important tool to consider. So right now in this next section, we're going to look at an option of the second core size, knowing that these two are the same. So you're going to hear us talking kind of interchangeably about the 22 versus the 20W now, looking at a fit solution for inclusive sizing. So just looking at, again, this is our women's 22. It's also our plus 20, and looking at a block pattern that has been mapped to that body, and then the 3D and the physical samples off to the left side. So Kim, why don't you walk us through what this looks like from the initial grade and comparing these now.
Mm-hmm. So this slide is showing you the graded size 22, the version 1 grade that I just walked you through, and it's comparing it to the plus size 20W. And this is the front, side, and back view. And you can see that that plus size core 20W, that's been reblocked. And so the fit is specific to that block. So when you compare these two, you can see the differences on the front, the across front of the graded 22. The drag lines at the side of the bust, the balance of the garment from front to back. And in the back, all of the extra back length on the graded 22. We want it to fit closer to what's happening on the 20W. And this is an overlay of the patterns. The gray pattern is the graded size 22, the version 1. And the orange pattern is the core size 20. And so you can see the differences, when looking at the back, that back armhole depth is a lot less on the 20. So there's that extra back length that we're seeing. The back neck depth is deeper on the 20 versus the 22. So that's bunching that we're seeing below the neck. On the front, the bust dart is much larger on the 20 than it is on the graded 22. So that's where we're seeing, those drag lines, and look at the armhole on the front also, the differences in size. That's where that gaping is coming from. And then also the sleeve cap, the differences in height. And there's so much more we could look at too. The side seam placement is also a big one to look at. A lot of times when you get into the larger sizes, when you can shift that side seam a little bit further toward the back of the body, you can get a better shaped armhole and more coverage.
Yeah, it's really impactful to look at the two results of the two like this, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay. So we've seen now the methodology of using a nonlinear methodology in grading. It is reactive to the body shape. It includes its best practices in grade distribution. But still in the end, we have what we've also referred to in the past as a best fit scenario. And now we're really tasked to find a better solution to do that. We do believe that a core size and reblocking is the right solution. It's a great solution. But what if we did try to do an alternative grade? So in this next exercise, we're going to walk you through the very complex process of engineering the garment grade to actually achieve the fit that we saw on the 20W. Okay, Kim, here you go.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people, if you're very experienced at grading, one would probably say, well, I can do that. Well, these are some of the ins and outs about that, and just kind of showing you how complex it actually is. So here I'm changing the grade of the arm, and I'm putting more armhole depth on the front of the body and less on the back. That's one of the changes that I made. The next change is I took those key girth grades, the bust, the waist, and the hip, and I redistributed, putting 65% on the front of the body and 35% on the back. And that's what I was talking about earlier. By shifting that side seam gradually more towards the back as the sizes get larger, it enables you to get a better armhole shape on the front and a little bit more coverage on the across front. And how I calculated that was a little bit complex too, because I looked at what percentage was covering the core size, and I calculated that for each size to be able to know how much to put on the front and how much to put on the back. The other change that I did is I graded the bust dart. So typically on a grade, you do grade the bust dart, but you keep the tip, the angle at the tip, the same degree. In this case, I graded the bust dart so that the degree of the angle at the tip is actually increasing as the sizes get larger. And how much, I had to look at the core size 20 to see how big that dart was to estimate how much I needed to grade that. So there wasn't anything from those body standards or specifications that told me how to do it. I had to first develop that core to be able to identify how big that dart needed to be to make it fit
Yes,
correctly.
and that's a really good point, Kim, that we want everybody to realize is that we're doing this exercise, but she's reverse engineering this grade to show you the complexity of it from the established core size, which is at that 20. And that's what makes it so complicated. It's a real brain teaser, isn't it, Kim?
It is. Correct.
Sorry about that. There we go.
The other thing that I did was the sleeve cap is not grading according to the low point of the shoulder like we did on version 1. Instead, I'm taking the height of the armhole depth on the back of the body and the front of the body and comparing them to the sleeve cap on the core size, figuring out what percentage that is, and then maintaining that across the size range. And you'll notice on the front that the lines are at an angle. They're not straight out to the side. And that's because when I measure the armhole depth on the front, I rotate the pattern so that the bust line from the underarm to the bust is the same as it is on the back, so that I'm measuring in that direction. That's kind of going down a rabbit hole there. I could go into a lot of detail about how to do that, but just trust me, it's a little bit more complex than just simply putting a grade on that coordinate. The other thing on this one is I did grade the back neck drop. So you'll see a difference there also.
Okay. Let's take a look at these patterns and the differences.
Yeah, here we're looking at grade version 1. Next to grade version 2, we're looking at the fronts side by side, the backs, and then the sleeves. Now the fronts don't look too different as far as the length goes, because if you recall, I did follow the front length grade according to the body on version 1, and I'm doing the same thing on version 2. What's different on version 1 or on the fronts is the side bust dart is grading and the girth distribution is grading. On the back, we're seeing a difference in the armhole depth grade and then also in the girth distribution at the bust, waist, and hip. And on the sleeve, you're seeing a difference in the cap height. And this was just the first attempt at, trying to get a little bit more detailed. We didn't get it perfect, but you're going to see that we got it a lot closer. As I was grading this, I also wanted to take a look at the armhole. So I did the same thing that I did with version 1. I removed the components of the sleeve and the collar so that I could take a look at what was happening at the neck and at the armhole and the front and back balance of those pieces. So already I'm looking at that armhole on 22 and it's got a lot better coverage. The back length looks much better. We don't have a lot of excess. And the back neck drop. The neck has a nice shape to it that's going to be workable across that size range. Now, when I modified that back neck drop, I also had to modify the front neck drop to be able to meet that total neck circumference. So that also made it a little bit more complicated. I'm meeting all of the body landmarks, front and back. Looks pretty good.
Yeah. Very complicated, but it looks good. Let's take a look at the pattern comparisons.
Yeah, so on the top, we have the version 1 grade, and on the bottom, we have the version 2 grade. And the core size 20 women is in orange on both of them. So on the bottom, you can see we're getting a lot closer to that core 20. I kind of already talked about the differences on version 1. So looking at version 2, there still is a slight difference in the shoulder slope. That did not get corrected. The front neck width and the neck depth on the front is different than the core size 20. So that is still causing a little bit of gaping right at that front neck. And then the sleeve cap height has just a slight difference. Also, what I'm noticing is the armhole depth is a little bit different. So I maybe could have increased the grade on that bust dart just a little bit more to bring up that front armhole a little bit more. And that might have eliminated some of those drag lines that were occurring below the bust on that largest size also. But it's a lot closer, don't you agree?
Yeah, it is. And just a note on the shoulder slope and adjusting the grade through the grading, that's something that can be tricky, even more tricky to do, and something we don't typically recommend doing. But it's just showing you that there is a difference in the two to get there. And another reason why, thinking about a complex grade like this, you need to give a lot of consideration to what it really means in terms of even training necessary and how to keep the consistency with your vendors in doing that kind of a grade as well versus doing a second core size. Let's take a look at all of them now.
Okay, so here we have the core size 6 on the left, and then we have the core size 20, the second from the right. So those were developed to that body. And then we're comparing the version 1 grade and then the version 2 grade on the far right. So you can see what the improvement is on the version 2 grade over the version 1. And here's the front view, and I think we have a side view. And a back. This is just taking a look at those armhole comparisons side by side, version 1 to version 2, and comparing it with that core size 20. And what we're noticing is the side seam placement. By redistributing the girth at the bust, waist, and hip on the version 2 grade, the side seam placement, you'll notice, is a little bit further toward the back on the version 2 grade. And I kind of highlighted that in yellow on the bottom so you can see the difference. That, like I said, it allows you to get a little better armhole shape and a little bit better coverage on the front armhole by shifting that back. The other thing that we're seeing here is take a look at those armholes. Now when you can look at them side by side, and we're getting a better fitting armhole on that version 2 grade, closer to that core 20 women's.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, Kim. So the question then becomes, do you, by creating the core size, a secondary core size, and then taking the grade from there, maybe a little bit down, a little bit up, you might have a better option that can be a repeatable standard with your suppliers as well. The other option, of course, then would be to do a very complex grade to get there. And then it's just weighing what is achievable and what it would mean, what are the implications for training with your vendors in that.
Yeah. The version 1 grade was so much easier to do, and it is repeatable, like you said. Mm-hmm. By creating that second core size and using that first grade, we'd be able to have a much better fit across that whole size set.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about children's. We don't talk about children's a lot, and we thought it would be great to just point out some things about the children's size groups. And we're looking at for this exercise, we've used the Alvenon Standard European Children. Typically, we're looking at them in 4 separate sections. Where we have infant to preemie, and we typically consider those to have with a diaper, toddler, little boy, girl, up to size 7, and then splitting into big boy and big girl, into separate size ranges from 8 up to 16. Kids and extended sizing has happened in anyone producing kids wear for years. It might have to do with merchandising, with how you're presenting your product, but having that size range go beyond maybe, dipping into either of the other 2-3 size ranges to try to meet the demands for merchandising and for your product. And we all know that I feel that grading children's clothing is the most difficult thing to do because of the erratic and rapid growth patterns across the size range, and trying to maintain ease over body, try to get the right fit. It becomes really difficult. So we decided to just look at a couple of things in this exercise. And so we have taken the groupings for the children's, and we've put together from an 18-month up to, we chose a boy 8, 128 centimeters. And we're going to talk about this as a size range. So a couple of things that we're considering right away about children's. We're using the core size 5, which is a pretty common size range in a grouping like this. We've made the decision to use the boy, but understand that if I was a brand doing this, I would want to also consider the option of the girl. There are different growth patterns that begin to emerge between boys and girls at about 8 years. And so you would want to make the decision that would be right for your brand, but it's something to consider when you're combining into the higher range where it's already splitting off because of different growth patterns. The other thing, 18 months to 24 months, typically would have a diaper on. So we're mixing the range here, and the smaller sizes where normally that size range would probably have a diaper. So in order to make some comparisons for you and for us to see what that means and the things we need to think about when we're approaching extended sizing in kids, we are also, going to look at where the overlap happens at this 18-month. And to do that, we're going to do just a little bit of comparison back to where that 18-month would typically come from, which is a smaller core size coming graded from the 12-month. So Liz, do you want to take us through some kids' findings?
Yeah, absolutely. So we graded a woven short. This pattern is graded for the 8 sizes that you saw on the previous page, the 18 months through the boy 8, core size 5. And on the next slide, we're going to show you the full size set in Clo. This is a video of checking the sizes, and we're going to show you the fabric in the thick textured surface, the translucent, and also a little bit of the heat maps. So here's a visual of all of them rotating. Really, really helpful visual to see them all aligned in 3D and be able to make some connections on the fit, the ease over body. Here's a nice zoomed in visual of checking all of the baseline landmarks against the pattern and the body to just check, is that grade working? Are there any areas that we might need to edit? And then here is the stress map, checking if the same visual from the 5, which is in the middle of the screen, are those areas that are blue, green, are they consistent? And I'm noticing on the back of the cuff, there's a little bit of red on the 3 lower sizes. And that could be because of the cuff height grade. We did not grade that in this example. So it's hitting on a slightly higher portion of the kid's forearm. So it might be a decision to grade the cuff height or grade those little details. And so on the next slide, we're going to show you just a still shot of the side view in the thick textured surface. So then there's also a transparent view, which is really helpful to see the ease of her body and the fit visual of all the sizes. Also from this side view, you can see the smallest two bodies, which is our 18 months and our 24 months. They actually are wearing a diaper in this example. We wanted to show you that combined range and talk about those areas that might be, a merchandising discussion or a wearability topic that a designer might want to consider.
Yeah, this is really interesting, isn't it, Liz, how the shape is changing from this core size 5 as it's coming a little bit more bell-like, even the balance as we go to the smaller sizes.
Yes, and we are going to talk about ease over body also after we look at the graded 12 months. So you'll see how, that ease over body was not exactly translated the way that we wanted from the core. So here is a smaller grouping. As Chris mentioned, we normally would recommend grouping in smaller areas so that you can better accommodate that body shape. These kids have a diaper on, and it's a core size 12 months, which also includes an 18-month body. So your previous range went all the way down to an 18 months, and then this one, your 18-month, is next to the core size, more in the middle of that range. All right, so something we haven't talked about yet is smoothing. And as Chris mentioned, grading in children's is somewhat more complex based on the body shapes and that drastic change of growth and proportion. So smoothing is very common in kids. It works really well to achieve consistent pattern shaping to the core size. It also maintains appropriate pattern shape for the ease and the sewing production. And it also considers the body growth at each size. So the visual that you're seeing here is an example where in the gray, the patterns, the 12 months is on the left and the core size 5 is on the right. And so the gray shows the grading that we proceeded with on the bodies. It's been smoothed. It accommodates that pattern shape. It also makes sure that the body does fit into each size. And then on the orange, you can see we adjusted the girths as a visual example of it following the body. And you can see it in the pattern on the right, the smaller sizes get very round shaped at the side seam, and the larger sizes get very hourglass. And those shapes can sometimes be tough to sew. They're also not as consistent when you're looking at the whole lineup, maybe in the store or on the body. So we wanted to just smooth everything and try to keep the shape more consistent. And so this slide is now the combined visuals of, we have the bodies from the 12-month graded pattern. We also have bodies from the core size 5 graded pattern, and you're seeing them grouped in their front views, their side views, and their back views. And it's helpful to look at them next to each other to see how was the ease over body fit intent or the fit visual at that core size translated well to the 18 months, and how do those 18 months compare to each other? And so we have a chart on the bottom left that does show some ease over body areas. We just really want to focus on the chest right now. So if you're looking at the 12-month core size, that ease over body at the chest, approximately 10%, looks consistent. And then if you go over to the core size 5, that 18 months, the chest percentage has increased. So instead of the 14%, it's now higher at 16. And that fit visual of 16 is also a lot looser looking than the fit visual from the core size 12 with 10%. So it just shows you how, that core size is graded and how it translates into those other sizes.
Yeah, it's super important when you have overlapping sizes, right? And you're coming some from a size 5, some from a 12, understanding the ease at both points, because even if you apply the same grade, as Liz mentioned, the grading is following the body on all the sizes in both groupings. The end result, when you get to the overlapping size, the fit's going to be different. And, this isn't only in children. This is when we talk about even, the second core size, when you consider that second core size in women's versus the women's core size. If the ease over body is different, any overlapping sizes will be different as well. Great.
Okay, so we've extracted out the patterns. That previous page, we were able to look at the 3D bodies, 18 months versus 18 months. This is now the patterns extracted out. So it's your 18 months from the 12 months and your 18 months from the 5, they're overlaid. And you can see a lot of visual differences. We talked about the ease over body at the chest. We also talked about the armhole depth, or we need to discuss the armhole depth. You can notice how the shape is different. And also your side seam placement, which we did talk about that a little bit in the women's. This also does translate to this example as well. and how when you graded, down to that 18 months from the 5, how it might seem in a different position, or the width overall of the body is not as consistent. And we did discuss earlier those smaller details, the proportions of height at your collar band, your cuff. You can see how visually they're different coming from that other core size. So that's a consideration. And this is another close-up visual of those 3D bodies. You have your 18 months from your 12 month in the middle, and also your 18 months from your 5. And noticing a few fit things that pop up. So your armhole depth, you can really see at that chest level how it's hanging lower on the one coming from the 5, as well as the hem at the side seam. It's hanging longer than the 18 months that came from the 12. So your hem visual is not as level around. And so I've prepared another example as well. We're going to talk about pants. And this visual is not as apples to apples. The construction is a little bit different for the fit intent and the wearability. So you're still looking at the same size ranges. The pattern on the left is your core size 12 months with the 4 sizes. And then the pattern on the right is your larger size range with the 8 sizes, your core size 5. And the key differences here is your 12 months who's wearing a diaper is most likely needing an elasticated waistband. So that is the construction on that pant. And then as you get up into your core size 5, they don't necessarily need that elasticated waist. So in this example, there's a dart in the back of the pant, there's a button closure, and no elastic. So when you're considering, the larger size range of the 5, does that construction and wearability also apply to a parent who might be dressing their 18 months or their 24 months infant with a diaper? And so here are the pants dressed. This is the 18 month and 18 month comparison. On the left, you have that elasticated waist. This body that is dressed is also wearing a diaper. We do have a diaper body in the virtual alva forms as well as a non-diaper for infant. And so the pant on the right is the body for the 18 month without a diaper. And you can see the visual shape change and some of the key fit areas. If we go to the transparent view on the next slide, you can see some of the ease over body differences, the way that they fit slightly different. The visual on the right coming from the 5 is gaping a little bit at the back waist, we can see, whereas it's held a little bit more snug on the pant that has the elasticated waist. You're also seeing, that the crotch position of the pant, since the diaper body crotch point is lower to accommodate where that diaper would be sitting on top of the body. And so here's a video that we have for you, and there's 3 bodies in the viewpoint just to set it up. The body that's all the way on the right is your core size 5, and all the patterns in this view are the button closure non-elasticated waist. In the middle is your 18 month body that is not wearing a diaper. And then just to kind of test the fit out on a diaper 18 months, we've dressed that body in the trouser pant with the button closure. So you can really see those fit differences if that customer were to wear this pant. So we're going to be just comparing them with the heat map on. You can see that the body in the middle and the body to the right have a very consistent visual as far as where the yellow is showing and the blue. Now we're just going to compare just the 18 months. We've removed the 5 from the viewpoint, and they're wearing the same pant. It's just a diaper body versus a non-diaper body. You can really tell where the infant wearing the diaper on the left might need a different rise shape and a different fit, especially in the areas of rise length, and the shape of the body is a lot more round. And so we're going to look at it in the thick textured surface so that we can better see kind of the curvature of the body and the way the pattern is fitting and the landmarks. Here's the side view. And we're going to zoom in on the hem here. And you can see, because the pant is sitting a lot lower on the body because of the crotch, you can see the pant on the left is much longer and sort of dragging on the ground. Here's a good visual of those waist markings on the form. And we always try to fit the natural waist as a good baseline landmark. So the pant without the diaper body on the right is really well accommodated for the rise length. With the diaper, it's not pulling up all the way. Okay. And on the next slide, we do have just a still comparison. These are the same bodies that we did just look at in the video, but just to take a closer look here. So I've aligned them with some landmarks, your waist and also your crotch. We did talk about how the waist is sitting too low and also just not enough crotch drop there. But just side by side, this is just such a great thing to do, to think about what body's going in this, the wearability, and that ease and tent that's established at the core size. Does it translate well to the bodies at the top and lower end of the range?
It's great, Liz. Thanks. So much to consider, even with these little bitty ones, right? About where you're coming from. Great. Okay. So just in summary, when we're talking about inclusive fit for continuous sizing, really, no matter what size grouping, what category you're speaking of, the goal really is to achieve a good fit for each customer across the size range. And so we just want to summarize what some key technical options might be. Certainly reviewing and understanding the garment grade is key, so you understand how it's performing and understanding how what the body actually looks like. So fitting on a cohesive core body and size set that accurately represents the customer demographic in that particular size range is really, really important to really being able to make any technical assessments and to make technical decisions, starting with those tools to really get an inclusive fit across a continuous size range.
And reblocking really helps to accommodate the differences in the body shape in a continuous size range, and you're more likely to achieve a more inclusive fit across the sizes. And when you're reblocking, you can keep the grade simple, and simple is most definitely more production friendly. We recommend that you establish a grade standard that not only works for your brand, but also can be easily replicated by multiple vendors to be able to fit, to achieve a consistent fit across the size range.
Yeah, and we know that 3D is a valuable tool to review the garment grade. It's also, as a positive, very sustainable. It contributes to eliminating that need for extra samples and the ability to cross-check different bodies on the fits that you're looking at in a very easy way.
Well, thank you, everyone. We hope you were able to get some good tips for fitting inclusive fit across a continuous sizing. I don't know if where we are for time, if we have any time for questions. And if we have any questions?
Yeah, we did have a couple. So there was one from Pattern Hack, and they were just curious about if the plus size 20W has a fuller bust cup than the 22 non-plus. Kim, do you want to take that question?
They are the exact same bodies.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one thing about the North American size grouping is that we've responded in creating those, we've responded to considering what brands might do in the industry in terms of what they might offer for continuous sizing. And so there is some overlapping sizes where you can make those kinds of decisions for your brand. But, as Kim mentioned, the 22 and the 20 are exactly the same body.
And we had one more from Gail, and asks, what are the critical points specifically the armholes. I believe this was when we were talking about the plus women grade, Kim. And what are those critical points that need to be considered and that might, you know, make or break the grade when you're applying it to the pattern?
Well, it certainly is the across shoulder for one thing. And I think, like I mentioned, we're following the across shoulder as closely as we can to the body, but we are smoothing it a little bit so that we can get a better armhole shape. But, and then the bust, there are across front and across back measurements that, you know, can be referenced, but I feel like, you know, by using an alternate core size and developing the fit on, you know, a 6 and a 20, and then grading up from the 6 and then down from the 20, and keeping the grade simple, you know, that you're going to have a better fit, you know, in between in those size ranges. And, you know, that's, I talked about grading the bust and the angle of the bust tip dart, you know, and that's also something that, you know, once you establish that fit in those core sizes, then doing a simple grade up and down from that, you're going to have a better fit in that armhole area.
Yeah, and I'll
Lots
just
to
add one other
consider.
thing to that. Yeah, it is. And I'll just add one other thing to that. You know, the best thing you can do to help with the armhole shape as well, rather than always thinking of controlling it by a specific point, is if you're starting from a block that's mapped to your fit standard and you're going from there, you're trying to keep that armhole shape as you're grading it up as well. So having a block to start from also really helps in achieving what you need to for through the grading for the armhole.
It does. And, you know, we've been talking
Mhm.
about a block that has a dart. What if you're working with a t-shirt or something that doesn't have a dart? You know, that then the overall ease over body has to be considered, and, you know, to achieve that good fit also.
And we kind of have
Absolutely.
answered this next question.
Oh, there is a question about that. Okay.
Yeah, it was totally relevant, so we popped it up. You bridged
Yeah.
super nicely into that, Kim.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was talking earlier about the distribution of the grade around the body, you know, by moving that side seam back on those larger sizes, you can reshape that front armhole and get a little bit better coverage on the large sizes.
Mhm.
Great.
Okay, well,
Well, I
thank
think,
you everyone
yeah,
so
thank you.
much for listening in today, and I guess we'll turn it back over to our hosts here.
All right. Well, thank you so much. As always, we really appreciate your expertise. And so we'll see if there are any more questions. And if there are, we'll be sure to email them to you guys.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you so much,
Great to
Liz.
be
Thank
here.
you.
Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. And that's day 2. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have heard a lot about authenticity in product, in people, and in action. We do hope you were inspired like we were. And I hope you join us tomorrow for day 3 of 3D Tech Fest 2022 for the day What's Next in Digitization. And we will be opening the day with speakers from Gap Inc. and Robin Lewis will interview Denise Candela, EVP of Apparel and Private Brands for Walmart, to close this year's festival. The recordings of today's live stream will be available for immediate rewatch on our YouTube channel. Individual session recordings will be available at 3dtechfest.com starting Friday, September 16th. Again, thank you, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow.